Hey, Rachel.
Hey, Kyle.
We are working with couples all day, every day to help them create their dream destination weddings. And one of the most popular spots that our couples are looking at is Tulum, Mexico. Would you agree?
I think so. I think Tulum is definitely one of the up and coming hot areas for a destination wedding right now.
Yeah, it's got a lot going for it. It's got a brand new international airport. It's got some really special, unique properties. It's still easy to get to from the Cancun area, and it feels like really unique. So, we get a ton of questions about Tulum. So, I made a list of all our most asked questions for Tulum, and I thought we could just kind of talk them through to help couples think about Tulum as an option. Think about if it's right for them. Should we go for it?
Let's do it.
Okay. What do you think makes Tulum different from other destination wedding spots in Mexico?
So I think for a lot of people, when they hear destination wedding in Mexico, their mind goes straight to Cancun. They're thinking about their best friend who got married in Cancun 2 years ago, or their cousin's destination wedding 5 years ago in Cancun. And that's the image they have in their head. So when we say, let's look at Mexico for destination wedding places, a lot of people are kind of hesitant because they don't want to go to the same place or do the same thing other people have done. But I think our couples need to realize that Mexico is a very large country and there's way more places besides Cancun to get married. We are definitely leaning into Tulum right now because of its accessibility. So, like you said, Tulum has a brand new, beautiful airport that, itself is a destination, is absolutely stunning. And you can also still fly into Cancun, and Tulum is less than 2 hours away, but it feels like a completely different destination. It has its own vibe, it has its own feeling, much as if you go to New York, it feels very different from Florida. So I think people have to realize geographically that Mexico is very different.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So, another question that we get all the time is what is my Tulum wedding going to actually feel like? What are the vibes? What does it look like if I'm actually going to have my destination wedding in Tulum?
I want to say the biggest word to describe a Tulum wedding is boho. That's the easiest way to describe it. If someone says I'm going to a boho wedding or I love, the boho chic feel, that's really Tulum in a nutshell without having to do anything. That's the aesthetics of the hotel, that's the aesthetics of the shopping areas and the restaurants. In Tulum, you're going to have a lot more natural elements. So thinking of wooden chairs and woven lanterns and natural linens, more of a natural theme with colors as well. So you're looking at deep greens and you're looking at dark woods, you're looking at the color of sand. So I think in general, the aesthetics of Tulum have their own vibe, and it's important to kind of stay within that palette when you're planning a wedding there.
Yeah, like a lot of our couples really want to work with that rustic, curated, handmade vibe that Tulum already has. They want to work with it and not against it. I think another important part about the vibe of Tulum is the jungle. It really is more of a jungle meets beach atmosphere than a destination like Cabo or Cancun. You're going to have a lot more landscaping just naturally in the properties there, which is great for couples because it means there's a lot less you need to do to make a space feel special because there will be palms and flowers and natural landscaping in every space automatically. So I think that lush, natural, nature forward, eclectic feel that Tulum has is a big contrast to Cancun. I think of it as Tulum is like Cancun's hippie little sister. Like she's
Yes.
vibey, she's having fun, she's got a tapestry on the wall. I like that she has this like homemade and like bespoke, whereas Cancun is a little bit more sleek, a little more chic, maybe a bit more mass produced.
Mhm.
Tulum is everything is individual, everything has a story to it, everything is curated.
Yeah, and I think you can still, with that boho feel, you can still have an elegant upscale wedding as well. There's so many different options in Tulum, which is why we love it, from, super cute boutique hotels on the beach to, kind of a more fun and safe option like the Hilton that's there, that's all inclusive, to the more upscale, options like the Secrets that are definitely super sleek, but in a boho way. So I think Tulum really has all those options as well. And like you were saying with the beach, it's not a huge white sand beach for miles and miles. You have some beautiful beaches surrounded by the natural vegetation, which I think, makes it a more unique vibe.
One of the first questions that we get asked from a couple is how much is this wedding going to cost?
Mhm.
And that's a really fair question to ask. People really are going to make decisions based on what fits their budget, and they should. The tricky thing is that it's hard to say exactly how much a wedding is going to cost. I like to tell couples it's kind of like saying, how much is it going to cost to build my house? You can get a rough estimate, but
Mhm.
every little decision that you make along the way is going to like increase that cost or decrease that cost. Are you going to opt for upgraded flowers? Are you going to switch to a more like fancy chair? All of that thing is going to affect the cost. But in general, we want to give people an idea of
Yeah.
how much can a Tulum wedding cost.
So I would say if you're looking at 50 to 65 people, which right now that's kind of the average of what we're seeing. Of course, we have some that are much smaller in the 30s, and then we have a few that are in the hundreds. But on general, we're seeing about 50 to 65 people. And I think you can expect to spend anywhere between $25,000 and $35,000. That's US dollars on your wedding, all in. Now, for a lot of people, this is going to be a shocking number because when they first start thinking destination weddings, they're thinking this is going to be a lot cheaper than having it in the States. And they are honestly, a lot of our brides are thinking it's going to be around $10,000. So when they first hear the number, I think they are shocked. But it's important to back up a little bit and realize the cost of a wedding in the United States right now. So if you are having 50 to 65 people, you're having a wedding at a nice venue, nice catering, upgraded flowers, and all of those things, you could be looking at 50 to 60,000 on that wedding. So this is about half the price of getting married in the US using the same type of elements. I think that's an important thing to know when you're first planning this wedding. The other thing I want people to know too is if you are looking to compare hotels and their wedding costs, it's really difficult to do because, like Kyle said, every element is going to add up. If you're going to choose this chair or that chair, if you're going to have it at this space or that space. And for a hotel to give you an exact number at the beginning, it's really difficult. Instead, we say first look at the hotel that kind of fits you and the vibe of your group, and then make sure you're comparing like hotels. So, if you're comparing a 4-star hotel, compare it to a 4-star hotel. Make sure that you're comparing, a $800 hotel to a $700 or $800 hotel. That's the first thing. Once you're comparing those hotels, the wedding is actually going to be about the same. They might package it differently, they might show it differently, but at the end of the day, it's all the same elements. So you can't really say this hotel's wedding is going to be more expensive than this one if the hotels are similar.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Um, the other important thing to know is if you are concerned about the budget, we really want to start with your budget and work backwards.
Yeah.
And that's something we're really skilled about. So, Rachel, if a bride comes to you and says, I want to get married in Tulum, my budget is $25,000 for the wedding and the wedding events. What goes into your mind to help keep that bride in her budget?
The first thing is your guest count. That is going to be the biggest factor of your wedding because at the end of the day, we can cut a little bit here or there by choosing these flowers or not doing this upgrade. But to really have a big impact on your budget is going to be your guest count. If you have $25,000 and that's a hard limit, just know that you're going to have under 50 people at that wedding, period. And then as you start adding guests, that wedding budget is going to increase, and it increases pretty fast per person. So the number one thing you can do to control the budget is control the guest counts.
Yeah. I mean, the difference between 50 and 51 people is probably not going to hit your budget, but the difference between 50 and 75 people is going to make a really big difference in wedding budget.
Yes, huge.
Okay, Rachel, another thing that our couples really ask us about is wedding packages. It seems like it's going to make things really clear and easy that everywhere's going to have a package, but oftentimes those packages can get really confusing for couples. So, what is typically included in a Tulum wedding package?
So I would say first, think about the package as the building block. This is the first piece. This is the foundation of your house. You can't move into a house, with just the foundation. You need the walls and the roof and the windows. And that's kind of how a package is going to work. So it's the building block. Usually within those packages, it's going to include the basics. So it'll include the white folding garden chairs. It's going to include a venue of the hotel's choosing, which is super important to realize because a lot of brides think that they're going to be able to pick wherever they want. Usually in that standard package, the hotel chooses. And if you want to choose, it's going to be more. It's not going to include the beach fee. There is a beach fee to get married on the beach in Mexico. It'll usually include an arch. It'll include the basic reception. So that's going to be like buffet style. It'll include just the tables and white linens, regular chairs, regular lighting. Usually it'll include like a 2-hour rehearsal dinner. But the big thing with all of this is it does not include things like decorations. It doesn't include usually DJs. It doesn't include dance floors or upgraded lighting. It'll usually only include a bouquet for the bride and not much else. So like I said, think about it as a building block or as the foundation.
Rachel, another thing that we should talk about when we're talking about Tulum wedding packages is the difference between an all inclusive property and what is called an EP or European plan property, where guests are paying for all their meals and drinks a la carte. So, how does staying at an all inclusive property help couples with their wedding budgets?
Yeah, I always push an all-inclusive property for a destination wedding because your guests are going to help subsidize the wedding. So they're already paying for all-inclusive food and drink. So at your reception, the hotel then includes the same things that they were already paying for. So you're not going to be paying a big difference for the reception dinner and drinks unless you upgrade it. And this is going to be a huge savings because typically the reception is going to be about 60% of your wedding budget. So if you're able to decrease the food and drink, you're going to have a lot more money to spend. If you are doing it at an EP, European plan, or kind of a regular hotel, you're paying for everything. You're paying, $150 a person for the meals. You're paying for a drink package for the bar. You're paying for the reception, setups and things like that. So I think that's a huge distinction is you might think, the guests are paying a lot more, but it's helping subsidize that wedding cost.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think about when you're at an all inclusive property, somebody has already paid for the drinks.
Yes.
So when the guests come, it's already factored in the cost of their trip there that they've already paid for their drinks. And that's a huge cost at a wedding is like an open bar, but that open bar is kind of already taken care of. What you're doing as a wedding couple in an all-inclusive resort is you're paying for like the staffing to be there, you're paying for a private venue, you're paying for decor, but you're not actually paying for that really high ticket cost of the drinks because that's already been paid for.
Exactly. And that's a way to really get the biggest bang for your buck for your wedding.
Yeah. And that's why all inclusive hotels and properties are so compelling for wedding couples. All right, Rachel, I've got one more question for you.
Let's
And
go.
this is a big one because it really changes the vibe of any destination wedding, and that's the venue. So, what do you tell couples about what they need to look for when they're choosing the actual venue for their Tulum destination wedding?
So I think there's 3 really big things to look at for the venue. I would say the first one is going to be privacy. How private do you want your wedding to be? And is it a big deal breaker for you? Some brides, they're fine having their wedding in kind of a public space and people walking by. They enjoy showing off their dress. Wonderful. But if you're not that type of bride, you need to check to see how private a venue space is going to be. Because a lot of these beautiful spaces are going to be smack dab in the middle of that public beach. The second thing I think is the venue guest count. We're seeing a lot of super cute venues pop up, but a lot of them can only fit 40, 60, 80 people max. So if you're looking to invite more people, you need to make sure that you have a venue that can fit everybody. And I think the third one would be if you are a bride that likes sand or doesn't. And this is kind of funny to say out loud, but I completely understand. There's some brides that want to get married with the beach in the background, but don't necessarily want to be walking through the sand. So you'll have to see if your venue has spaces that overlook the beach, like on a veranda or maybe a raised platform, that you don't have to walk through the sand. And actually, I'm going to throw one more in, the ability to pre-book a location. So some hotels, they will decide your location for you 30, 60 days before the wedding, kind of based on all of these different factors, where other hotels, you get to choose that venue from the very beginning.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're thinking about a wedding venue in Tulum for your destination wedding, you want to think about what is the privacy factor of that venue? What is the capacity for that venue? And is there going to be sand on this beach, or is it maybe going to be in a garden overlooking the beach? And then can you guarantee and pre-book that venue? Those are the four factors we're really looking at. And we're thinking about a Tulum destination wedding venue.
You got it.
Tulum is right for a lot of our couples, but the truth is there are some couples that Tulum is just not the right choice for their destination wedding. Who are the type of couples that should think about skipping Tulum and looking elsewhere?
I think that there's a few different factors on this one. I think the first one is if you are looking for a more traditional wedding, thinking maybe ballroom or something super modern, or you want something more Americanized, if that makes sense, Tulum is not for you. You know, if you are looking to have the white roses and you need asparagus on your wedding plate, and it is super important that you're in a modern new ballroom for your reception with air conditioning, skip Tulum.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will also say guest count. If you're thinking about having 200 people at your wedding, Tulum is a trickier choice for you. It's not impossible, but your choices in Tulum are really small for venues that can handle a very large wedding. So you might have one or two choices at Tulum, whereas a guest count of 200 people would have 20 choices in Cancun. So think about your guest count is a pretty big indicator as well.
Mhm.
Um, I will also say, I don't know.
I would say travel too. So yes, Tulum has that international airport, but it doesn't service everywhere like Cancun does. So if you have a lot of guests that are very difficult to travel or have never traveled before, or this is their first big international trip and they can't get to Tulum direct, and this is the first time they've really left the country, it might be trickier to do Tulum, not impossible, than it would somewhere super direct like Cancun.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So the last wedding that we did in Tulum, about half the guests flew into Tulum Airport and about half the guests flew into Cancun. But if you really want that ease of travel, if you want to be able to fly to direct into an airport, get off of the plane, and be at a resort in 10 or 15 minutes, Tulum is not a great choice for you.
No.
You want to go to a different type of destination like Cabo or Cancun.
Yeah, and I think it should be mentioned too that although we both love the Tulum airport, super chic, easy, not crowded, it's 30 to 45 minutes away from the hotels and the Tulum zone. So, it says Tulum, but it is not down the street like it is in Cancun.
Another thing couples should really think about when deciding if Tulum is right for them is accessibility. Do you have guests that have accessibility needs? Maybe do you have your grandma coming who's in a walker or someone coming that makes it really hard for them to go upstairs? Tulum is a trickier place for that because there's so many natural elements in a Tulum property, like sand pathways or like stepping stones. And so that can make it hard for a guest with accessibility needs to navigate a lot of the resorts in Tulum. And we find that in a place like Cancun, there's a lot more accessible pathways. Everything has an elevator. There's like ramps. So if accessibility is a need for you or some of your VIP guests, you really want to think about that when you're choosing between Tulum and a different destination wedding destination.
Yeah, great one.
Um, Rachel, what is your favorite thing about destination weddings in Tulum?
Oh, there's so many, but I think right now my favorite thing is that Tulum is easy to get to compared to other places or other destinations, but I love how unique and bespoke all the weddings in Tulum are. You don't see those cookie cutter weddings, even at the bigger hotels. Everything is super individualized and it feels like a brand new destination.
All right. If you're interested in Tulum for your dream destination wedding, but you have questions, let us know. We know all about it. We've got the answers, and we'll give you some real talk about what it takes to get married in Tulum. Thank you from Signature Destination Weddings.
We'll talk to you soon.